What's up guys? In this video we're going to look at SnapShove. If you've not heard of it, it's one of the best tournament apps slash programs out there. It started as a mobile app, so as you'll see on the page here, we've got it for Apple and for Android, but it has recently been ported over to desktop as well. So I'll be using the desktop version for this video. It's a monthly subscription for SnapShove. I think there's both a basic and a pro version. This one's the pro version, $12.99 a month. That's US dollars, I believe. Which, you know, if you invest a lot of time into the month you have it, getting all the ranges down, memorizing them, it's definitely a worthy investment. So I want to talk a little bit about how SnapShove works. As it says in the About section, it's built using unexploitable Nash equilibrium ranges. Now, essentially, what a Nash equilibrium is, it's when all players' ranges are optimal. And this makes a scenario where neither player is incentivized to deviate from their strategy because they're playing as optimally as they can, and so their strategies can be described to be in equilibrium. One drawback to having a program which solves poker in this way, I guess, is that in practice, players don't play optimally, particularly at the micro stakes that we're mainly focusing on in these videos. And so this will mean there are times where we should deviate from strategy that SnapShove advocates. That is in situations where we know that our opponents themselves are not playing optimally. So if we just imagine a quick example, let's say a player in the small blind, they shove much tighter than the SnapShove ranges would indicate. This would mean that an adjustment we should make to maximize our expected value against them is to call with a tighter range ourselves, as it would be a more losing play to call with a wider range versus a tighter shoving range, as SnapShove would advocate. So these are the kind of adjustments you can make as and when they pop up. But that said, SnapShove does allow you to build a very strong foundation for all of your short stack tournament play. So I would generally advocate for using its ranges and strategies as a baseline, and then deviating from them as and when you pick up information on opponents which might be deviating from optimal strategy. Let's get into the ranges. So kick it off with the shoving ranges. Obviously what SnapShove is most known for. You'll notice there are a few variables at play here. First off, we have the number of players. Bear in mind that the fewer players there are at the table, the wider that your shoving ranges will be. Next up we have ante size, and again, the bigger the ante, so if we go from 1/10 through to 1/4, the bigger the ante, the wider your shoving range will be, because there is more dead money in the pot, and so we're getting better odds and need less equity to call with our range. Next up, we have big blinds, and again, this time around, our range will get tighter the more big blinds we have that we're shoving. And so for the shoving and calling ranges, SnapShove caps at a total of 25 big blinds. This is because at stacks deeper than this, so at 26 big blinds plus, it's generally more profitable to play a mixed strategy, so there might be some hands which make more money as open raises as opposed to jams, hands like aces and kings. And so for that reason, SnapShove just caps out at 25, as that's a good kind of marker for short stack play. And finally, we have positions. Under the gun, obviously, will be the tighter shoving range, and the later position we get, the wider the shoving ranges will become. Let's look at a couple of examples just to see how it works. So an under the gun shoving range at under the gun +1 shoving range at a 9-handed table, we can see is 7.5%. So tight, as expected, And just for comparison's sake, if we do the small blind, we'll see it's much wider because we have fewer players for our shove to get through. So it just comes up with a hand matrix, says the percentage of overall range. And you can fiddle about with this in your own time, but just know that with all of these customizable options, the amount of output that SnapShove can produce is quite extraordinary. There's a lot of variation depending on all of the parameters that you put in. And as a general guideline, I think most players will probably be shoving slightly to, let's take 10 big blinds for an example. I think most players will probably be shoving tighter than what optimal play suggests. So with 10 big blinds here in a 9-handed table under the gun, or under the gun +1, but it would be under the gun in a 9-handed game, we can see that it is considered profitable to be shoving hands as weak as 8-9 suited and 10-9 suited. Obviously, if you're playing at a table where players are calling too much, we should be narrowing this range, but this is just one of those adjustments that you make on the fly depending on your opponents. But yeah, I think in general, people tend to shove tighter than what is correct. Next up, let's look at the cooling ranges. So the only variable to change here is the cool position. So we can specify the other things as normal. Let's say we're facing an under the gun +1 shove, and this time we're thinking about cooling on the button. And SnapShove will show the hands which we can profitably cool with. And so in this scenario, it's going to be 10%. Now these hands will be adjusted to have, or picked rather, to have the most equity versus our opponent's shoving range. And so for that reason, we have some pocket pairs, as these will have good equity against their unpaired hands, and all of our strong aces as well, as these retain their equity well when cooled. Next up, there is the reshove feature. Now, unlike the shove and the cool sections, which are effectively solved in that there is correct plays to do if everybody's playing optimally, reshove is not that way. The reason for this is just that there are so many variables at play. When we factor in the variable opening size, the potential for different opening ranges, players cooling behind, reshoving can get quite complex to solve perfectly. But that said, using this feature is a really good way to kind of get a good guideline for what reshoving ranges might and can look like. So let's just do one more example here. Let's say we're 6-handed and the ante is 1/8. And let's say we face a hijack open and we're thinking about reshoving from the cutoff. So you can input different opening sizes. Obviously, most times we'll expect 2 or 2.5. Different opening ranges. This we can do a specific percentage if we want, which is nice. So it does allow us for some specific customization, or we can just do the preset ones here. So 25 for normal, which we'll go with. And then we can calculate. And the nice thing about this is that it does show our result as an expected value calculation. So here, if we reshove from the cutoff with 10 big blinds effective, we're expected to make 0.28358 big blinds per reshove. Obviously, this doesn't seem like a small amount. This does seem like a small amount. But in a game of fine margins, this sort of amount does add up, and having a positive EV decision is definitely better than having none at all. So the reshove feature, again, as I say, it's worth mucking about with to get a good guideline for the ranges, but really reshoving varies so much on all of the different components at play. I would kind of assess it on a case-by-case basis. Finally, we've got the training section. Now, this is one of my favourite features of SnapShove. One, it's really good to help you to remember all of the ranges. And as we've said, there are so many as you customize the variables that this is impossible. But it's a really good way to kind of drive them in and get as close to remembering them as you can. You can also specify exact simulations here. So let's say you struggle with that kind of awkward stack depth. So let's say 15 to 25 big blinds. This is something where the 10 big blind stack, it's an easy shove or fold. Sometimes as we get deeper to 15 to 25, where the ranges get a bit tighter, it's a little bit more confusing sometimes. So let's say you're weak in this area, you want to run some questions on it. You can do number of players, so let's say 9-handed. You can mix if you're wanting to practice shove spots, cool spots, or mixed. For this example, we'll do mixed. And you can specify the number of questions. Actually, for good variety, let's do 1 through to 25. And let's just fire up 10 questions just to get a feel for how this works. So we have 1 big blind under the gun plus 2. This is going to be a shove with antes. When you have 1 big blind, you should be shoving more or less every hand. As we can see here, we're not shoving 7 deuce off and 7 3 off. Or there's a couple of hands, so we're shoving about 95% or something. One of the nice things about the training feature is it does show the range that we should be shoving or cooling with, etc. And so for each situation, you'll be presented with the players at the table, the actions, and your choices. So here with 2 big blinds, again, I believe this will be a shove. So this time, 9-7 suited. So this time we're slightly below the margin. Hopefully we get some deeper. Okay, actually, if you just wait, I'm going to change the setting here because a lot of these very short stacked situations are not too intriguing. Ace king, ace shove. Okay, we're getting some more interesting ones now. Queen jack suited, 12 big blinds under the gun. This is very close, and this is another nice aspect of the training. They always give you hands which are close, so they're not going to throw 7 deuce offsuit at you and ask whether or not you should be shoving. I believe this will be a shove, and the ranges do show that, so it's 9s plus, queen jack suited, so we're right on the margin there, and king jack suited plus, and those aces as well. Ace king, facing an under the gun 22 big blind shove. This is going to be a call, but I think what's going to be interesting here is facing an under the gun shove and such a large one at 22 big blinds. Ace king suited is actually going to be the bottom of our calling range, I believe. We should probably be ace king suited and kings and maybe queens and ace king off. Yeah, so queens plus, kings, aces, ace king suited, and ace king off. So ace king off is the bottom of our calling range there. A couple more. Ace queen suited under the gun. Right, so this is as tight as the ranges can be on SnapShove, since this is the maximum cap for the shoving ranges, and we're in the earliest position. 3, 6, 7, though we are 8-handed. I believe this will be a shove. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way, it's very close. So this is a shove. We can see there's a couple of worse hands in there. We do have the ace 5 suited and the ace 4 suited in there for bluffs, just for their blocking properties. 2 more here, facing a low jack shove. Given the other scenario with ace king, obviously this one's going to be a call. We're facing a shove from a later position than the previous example and with fewer big blinds. So there we can see ace queen suited is the bottom of our range there. Queen 9 suited facing a button shove in the big blind. This will be a call, I believe, and I hope for it to be a call to So we're again, we're right on the cusp there. The reason I wanted to make that point is that we should be cooling fairly wide versus a button shoving range, given how wide it is. Obviously, we're just on the cusp there. But it's nice to see the range that applies. So in this case, we do still have to be cooling with some of our queens. That is queen 10 suited, even some of our weaker kings, so king 9 suited and king 10 off. So that's it for the training. Humbled a little bit as I did lose a couple of questions there. But as I say, there's so much to learn in SnapShove and so much to remember that don't beat yourself up if you do find that you don't get these right. As long as you have a kind of close idea of what these shoving ranges are, it's something that's really important for your tournament game. Just having a really good broad idea of what these shoving, cooling and reshoving ranges look like. And so for that reason, SnapShove, thoroughly recommend it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.